What's going on with North Korea? We're joined by Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney. Governor, as you look ahead, we're a couple of weeks away from Election Day. Do you see North Korea and its nuclear ambitions as perhaps the biggest thing on voters' minds?
Well, I think people are very concerned about nuclear proliferation, but I think they're also very concerned about what's happening in this country. They're pleased to see our economy growing, the stock market strong, jobs growing very quickly. And I think as they look at the races coming up, they're going to say not just what Congress as a whole has been doing, but instead what has their congressman been doing. And ultimately we're going to see that the Republicans will hold on to both houses.
O'Reilly Factor Encore.
Ever think about this North Korean leader? Is he just insane?
It's Bill's exclusive with President Bush.
This is a job where there's only one decision maker, and that's me.
Tonight, catch the President, the exclusive, The Factor.
No one wants to end the war in Iraq more than I do and bring our troops home, but no one wants to do it in a way that does not, more than I do, that does not compromise our national security or dishonor the service and sacrifice of our soldiers.
We rushed into war without the proper facts. Now it's tens of thousands of dead and wounded, hundreds of billions of dollars, and our country is less secure. Our military is stretched thin.
A bit of a Connecticut Senate debate there. Connecticut, one of many states where Democrats are hoping to win congressional seats by focusing on Iraq. With the election 18 days away, will getting voters angry over the war work for Democrats? We're talking with former Louisiana Senator Bennett Johnston and Republican strategist Edwina Rogers. Welcome to both of you.
Hi.
Senator Johnston, I know that the Connecticut situation is a little unusual because you had the sitting Senator, Lieberman, defeated in the primary. He has become an independent to continue his campaign, and yet he seems to be leading in the polls, even though he has supported the war in Iraq. Is that because of that position or because he is simply a familiar face to voters?
Well, I think they think that the race is bigger than Iraq. I'm for Lieberman because I think he's a great senator, not because of what he says in Iraq.
Edwina Rogers, is it the issue that seems to be hurting Republicans at the polls?
Americans are smart. They can see through this, and the insurgents in Iraq want to influence our elections. Well, it's going to backfire on them.
You may be right, but then again, Senator Johnston, you could be wrong. I mean, there are indications that al-Qaeda and the other terrorist groups operating in Iraq are very aware of the election timetable, and that may be why they have stepped up their attacks on U.S. forces. It may be why this month is proving to be one of the bloodiest in Iraq since the war began. If they are trying through killing our soldiers to drive us out of Iraq, is that a reason to stay the course?
Well, I don't think so. Look, John, I think this issue is almost decided on Iraq. I hate to say it.
President Bush presses the Republican case on the campaign trail, saying Democratic attacks on supporters of the Iraq war show Democrats cannot be trusted with America's security.
Last night at a fundraiser in Virginia, the president said Democratic prescriptions for Iraq amount to either an immediate withdrawal or one within a few months. He said they've purged the party of war supporters.
6 years ago, the Democrats thought that Joe Lieberman was a good enough man and a good enough politician to run as the vice presidential candidate. Now, because he supports victory in Iraq for the sake of security in the United States, they don't think he's fit to be in their party.
Democrats say the Bush administration's mismanagement of the war in Iraq has left the country with only bad options, but deny an immediate pullout is one of them. White House Press Secretary Tony Snow downplayed a report that violence is up 22% in Baghdad, even though more troops were sent to the city to stem it. And he brushed off a report in the Washington Times that the administration is considering a course correction in Iraq.
That's a bunch of hooey. I mean, it seems to be a collection of actually old hooey brought into a piece of new hooey.
Republicans hoping to hold their majority in the Senate. They see Maryland as an opportunity, even though that state hasn't had a Republican senator in 26 years. But the GOP is running a tough campaign against Democratic Congressman Ben Cardin. Lieutenant Governor Michael Steele is the Republican candidate. We also invited Congressman Cardin to appear on Fox News. We are hoping his schedule will allow that one day soon. Well, the gloves come off in the Rhode Island Senate race. Republican Senator Lincoln Chafee squared off against Democratic challenger Sheldon Whitehouse in their first televised debate. Chafee stresses his independence from the Republican Party and his vote against the war in Iraq.
Ohio, another state where candidates are pointing fingers, hoping to gain a seat. A political ad approved by Democrat Sherrod Brown accuses Senator Mike DeWine of dropping the ball on fighting terrorism. The ad claims that DeWine ignored terror threats before 9/11 and that he rarely attended Senate intelligence hearings since then. Joining us now is Ohio Senator Mike DeWine. Good to have you with us. Well,
good to be with you. Thank you.
I know that you've seen the ad. It uses language from the committee meetings to claim that you really weren't there very often. What's your response?
My response is it's absurd for Sherrod Brown to be talking about intelligence. This is a man who voted 10 times during the 1990s to slash our intelligence spending. Fortunately, he did not succeed. Then when we all came together after September 11th, Democrats and Republicans, to pass the Patriot Act, it passed 98-1 in the Senate. Only 66 House members voted against it. He was there as one of the 66 who voted against it.
When you take a look at the latest polling in your state, and I know some people go by the polling and others absolutely don't, but the latest Real Clear Politics poll shows that your opponent is up by double digits. The same for the CBS poll, the Quinnipiac poll. You know, when Republicans look at your state, you know what they're seeing. They're looking at some corruption issues. They're also looking at a Republican governor that raised taxes. Really a party that hasn't gone by what the Republican Party, used to stand for. Okay, Senator DeWine, thank you very much. We would also like to mention that we did ask Mr. Brown to join us, and he did not get back to us. Thank you. From the war in Iraq to securing our borders to economic growth, there is a lot at stake this election day. Many polls now showing Democrats with a good shot at victory. So what would a Republican majority in the House mean for America? Joining us is Virginia Congressman Jim Moran, a member of the House Appropriations Committee. Thank you very much for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be with you, Edie.
Well, the Democrats have to take 15 seats. A lot of people say that 12 are pretty much a lock right now. What would be the key difference that Americans would see?
I think the principal difference will be that the stranglehold that the K Street lobbyists have over the process of legislation will be broken. They address the deficit in the way that Papa Bush, the 41st president, did by implementing pay-go requirements that enabled President Clinton to have a surplus in terms of the federal budget rather than the enormous deficit we have today. In other words, any tax cuts have to be offset by spending cuts and vice versa.
Some people bring up as an area of concern is that at a time when, yes, the Dow is moving up, but we're still having this issue with OPEC and and other things, perhaps inflation. They're concerned about Representative Rangel's comments that he doesn't see one of those tax breaks that he thinks should be continued.
Well, I think that the emphasis that many of the people in the Democratic leadership have on alternative energy sources will be a positive change.
Yeah, but let me just stop you there. I mean, because we've been talking about alternative energy sources since before I was born. And if we actually got serious ever about that, it'd still be 20 years off. But right here and right now, these tax breaks have helped helped move us forward, have taken a lot of people and given them more money. And so many people are concerned that'll go away.
But you don't need to be giving billions of dollars to oil companies that are making, in fact, this year they will make over $60 billion in revenue, the top 5 companies. Why are we giving them billions of dollars in tax breaks to drill on publicly owned land in the Gulf Coast? There are tax breaks that don't need to be made.
Okay. And I can give you that one.
Coming out of the pockets of the American people.
You can make the argument about oil companies, but that's not the American people. We're talking about marriage credit. We're talking about child credit, the things that really do affect the people.
I've talked with Charlie Rangel. He feels strongly about maintaining many of the middle-class tax cuts.
Representative Moran, thank you very much for joining us.
Sure.
And, of course, that is the Democratic perspective. And later on, in just about a half hour or so, we will have the Republican perspective with Majority Whip Roy Blunt. So stay tuned. He'll talk about what his party needs to do. Immigration is a key issue in state politics this election season. In Oregon, the issue of driver's licenses could bring a big Republican upset. Fox's Dan Springer has more from Seattle. Tell us all about this.